So, welcome to the Grow Podcast. I'm Ashley, and I have my partner in crime here, Wendy.
Today, we're talking about a topic that comes up a lot with the clients that I work with and friends and even myself. And that's imposter syndrome.
Yes, that is a big one. I think in a lot of communities and groups of people for different reasons, we don't, we think we're the imposter. We think we don't deserve the credit. We think that we don't belong here, if a good thing is happening. And so I think that's part of I think it's partly confidence but I think the other part of it is like programming. Like you've been given a cap. So the example I had in my personal life was when I got to above six figures in my job, I was like, wait, I have nothing else to work towards. Well, first it was, I didn't think I deserved that salary and I had to work through that. And then later I was like, well, what do I work towards if I've already accomplished this goal that I think I've been working towards my entire life that isn't actually my goal? And, because when I was a little girl, my dad would always say, don't work for $20 an hour, work for $45 an hour. And, like he was telling me to strive for more than what he probably had access to at the time. And so in my mind, I internalized like that's the goal. And when I got there, I was like, wait, did I do this? It's unbelievable. Do I even belong here?
Right.
And I think in that situation, my biggest takeaway was learning how to have that confidence in myself in order to better sell myself in positions of power like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm wondering has it ever shown up for you?
Oh, yeah, it definitely has. I wanted to I, of course, have a definition. So I've got to read that. Right? Yes. Imposter syndrome is a psychological pattern where individuals doubt their accomplishments and have a persistent, often internalized fear of being exposed as a fraud, despite evidence of their competence. Yes. So when I read that too, I could really relate to that many, many times. I have actually been waiting backstage to go and speak in front of a lot of people several times and thought, why did they pick me to do this? Like right in that moment. Yeah. What do I have to say that's so valuable and important before these people that's different than anybody, and I would have to kind of talk myself out of that and realize that, I have, something to offer, that I have lots of experience and education and, abilities, and that I belong there. Yeah. So I think for me, so it's happened in those moments. It's happened even at times when I'm hired for a job, like you said, at a high rate of pay, and I think to myself, why would they give that to me?
Yeah.
And yeah, right. And if I say something, to a friend or my wife about that, they just look at me like I've lost my mind, And so it's definitely something internal. I think for me, it's related to perfectionism in a lot of ways. I feel like if I'm not absolutely perfect, then I'm not as valuable, or surely at some point they're going to see that I'm not perfect and realize that I don't deserve this position, this pay, whatever it happens to be. And I think it's really important to talk about this because I wonder if men have those same feelings, number one. I think it is related partly to our sex, maybe. I don't know. I want to hear what you have to say about that. And I think more people have those feelings than we know. Yeah.
I agree that more people have those feelings than we know, because it shows up so differently in everybody that sometimes the person themselves don't even realize that they're displaying imposter syndrome, because maybe it's not like textbook kind of thing, but you being deserving of your position, that looks different to everyone or
Mhm.
deserving of this opportunity or whatever it is. But I do think men go through their own version of it.
It's a psychological thing. It's not, and it's not based in any, truth really. But I think it's because of that internalized feeling that really often is assigned to men that, they have to keep striving. They should be making more money. They should be the provider, the protector, so I can relate to that.
Yeah, yeah. I think I have too. I've internalized some of the patriarchal like roles and responsibilities like internally, you know what I mean? Like it's not like somebody tells me that I have to do
Right.
this. It's like this internal drive. I feel like I need to do this or that. And so in a lot of ways that gets in my way. Because and similarly I strive for perfection, and perfection, is just not attainable. And so when you have moments of highlight, and I want to go back to what you said too about like it's not based in truth. I think it is based in truth. It's based in your truth. You see what I'm
Mm,
saying? It's just that because other people will look at you and say you're worthy. I think you're worthy to be on this stage in front of hundreds of people. But you're saying I'm not worthy. And so you're making that notness true. You're
I see.
disregarding the I am. You're disregarding what they're projecting onto you. You're saying, no, I don't accept that. I accept that I am not. And
Right.
yeah, so
Yeah, I can relate to that because it happens with me also when I have an accomplishment. So let's say I win an award or receive some kind of, commendation or something. In my mind, I'm already like I don't really fully let it in. I don't like
yeah,
people will say to me, "Oh, congratulations, it's so great." I can't even really feel it. And I think it's part of this syndrome.
I do
Um,
too.
really? Yeah.
I do too. I relate to that. Like everything you're saying. Like when I wrote stigmatized, accepting myself as an author. Like people like you're an author. What do you have to say about it? Nothing. I'm Ashley. Please stop telling me that. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? I just wrote a book. Like I would rather say I just wrote a book. I sat in my basement and typed on my computer instead of accepting that people who sit in their basements and type in computers and publish things, they're called authors, right?
I can really relate to this. Yeah. You know, I don't know. So I'm not exactly sure if it's because of that perfectionism again, because nothing is ever quite good enough
Yeah.
in our minds, right? That's our reality. So the question is how to flip that around so that it doesn't happen, right? And I think we
Yeah.
should talk about that when we come back.
What have you done lately to celebrate the things that you have achieved? For whatever reason, you think that you are unable to accept all of your achievements, or even realize that you deserve it, or even that the recognition is important because you legitimately work towards it. All the people that I've met that are dealing with imposter syndrome suffer with anxiety too. Like there's always something more and more and more that you have to do in order to really get recognized, but you're already getting recognized. There are people who are celebrating you all the time. You're just not doing it. So take a second to recognize all that you've contributed to your goals and achievements. Write them down and speak about them with confidence. Keep going. The world needs you. Have you ever thought about consuming cannabis but was worried about smoking it or eating it? Or maybe you just want to give your lungs a break, or you had a really bad edible experience. As a healthcare professional, I am very conscious of the multiple ways of dosing your medicine. One of the ways that you can consume cannabis is through a transdermal patch. This is not often talked about. The cool thing about transdermal is that there is a 97% bioavailability to this type of consumption method. Now, the problem is finding a trusted resource to facilitate your consumption. And guess what? I found a product that I support. It's called Synergy Skinworks. It's a cannabis delivery system that works effortlessly since the medicine goes where the blood flows. Patch on, peace out.
And we're back. We're talking about imposter syndrome today, and hopefully in this segment, maybe some solutions. But we're also kind of getting to the bottom of where it lies when it comes up, right? And it seems like achievements are kind of a trigger for it in a way.
Yeah, like we're not comfortable with accepting achievements. Even, isn't it funny like on our birthday when everybody wants to sing happy birthday and the person whose birthday it is gets like all shy and bashful. It's like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe you're singing to me right now." Like it's almost like we don't even accept that we deserve to be celebrated in a moment. It's like we can't take that in. Or I know for me, like I used to hate having parties that were centered around me. I know I made a really big deal when we got married that I didn't want a big wedding because I didn't want a lot of people looking at me and like literally just I didn't want a ton of people celebrating me during that day. Like I didn't feel like it was worth it wasn't really an accomplishment for people to go out of their way to spend their money and all that kind of stuff. And and I think in a lot of ways it's because I didn't feel like I deserved to be, accomplished, to
Mm-hmm.
be acknowledged as accomplished. And I didn't want that for a really long time. And I think it was some sort of fear mixed in there. And,
Could be.
so I don't know.
Right. So, what are we? I think you're right that there is some fear attached to it. Also, that kind of attention, right? Because if you accept the attention, then you're accepting the accolades, or you're accepting the love and the caring that people are giving to you. And even though you would give that to someone else freely, to
Yeah,
accept it for yourself means that you really see your worth, I think.
yeah, I agree with that. And yeah, and I think receiving the act of giving is more common for us. We're excited to give gifts. I don't know if we know how to receive them. And I don't think that's really taught in our culture very well, how to receive.
Right.
Um, because a lot of times when, like it goes into some of that conversation about submission and, like those more feminine traits that are part of a balanced human experience, giving and receiving, dominance over submission, like you can do both. Those are both. So being able to find balance in how the world perceives you and accepting and
Right.
receiving, and then also giving what you have to give in a moment. And I think that's what we be talking about when we filling up cups. How to be like, don't pour into an empty, you can't pour from an empty cup, you
Right.
know. So I don't know.
Right. I think that could be part of it too. Um, I think so. We talked about perfectionism and about seeing our own worth, right? So I think part of the way to kind of combat it, maybe, is to find some way to accept, firstly, that perfectionism, being perfect, is not attainable.
Yeah.
Right? So I don't know. What are your thoughts about what is the road to being able to accept that?
I mean, it just is like you can't be perfect. There's no such thing as perfect. It's a fleeting idea of perfection. It's a made up idea. What it's about is just being okay with the fact that you just are. Whatever you brought to this moment, whatever you brought to this experience, whatever actions you took to receive the accomplishment, it's here right now. And so you're so you just what do you do with it? You can either reject it or you can receive it. And so if we're gonna create flow in our lives, right? Nobody wants to be stuck. The recommendation would be to receive what's being offered.
I love that whole thing. Right? Because um, I've said many times, and I'm sure many others have said this too, you know, love and fear are inversely proportional, right? So the more fearful you are, the harder it is to feel the love, to feel uh, connect the love that connects us all. So in that moment, in the example I gave, where I'm standing backstage and they're about to introduce me, and I'm thinking, I'm not worthy, and why did they ask me?
Mhm.
It's all fear, right? And the homeostasis is off, and I can't, unless I decide to open up and just accept my imperfection and my perfection at the same time, and let the love in, I'm not going to be able to do what I'm there to do, right? So in some way, I do resolve it, but the way that you put it is so poignant, and it's just, yeah, I can completely relate to that.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, because a lot of people, when I work with them and they talk about the fact that they have imposter syndrome, we kind of talked about it before we came back. I think part of the issue with imposter syndrome is the fact that we gave it a name.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're like, yeah, I've got imposter syndrome. What do I do with this syndrome? It's like, no, it's not a disease, man. Like,
Right, we medicalize everything, right? I want to point out that uh, the current DSM, I think it's DSM-5 for psychological disorders, imposter syndrome is not in there. It is
oh,
not.
really?
It is not a disorder, actually. But we make it into one. You're absolutely right.
And we accept it as true. So we're not willing to accept the accolades, but we're willing to accept this syndrome that somebody made up that went viral. We just, it just is what it is. And it's like, okay, it's one thing. And most likely, well, however that concept came up, I really have no idea how, but however it did, it probably was an attempt to conceptualize some common things that people suffer with. And because we gave it a name, it makes it more pervasive.
Right.
And so I think really what it comes down to is really just figuring out what it is that's stopping you from finding your joy or your flow. Like whenever fear comes up, whenever anger comes up, like whenever bitterness comes up, whenever those things come up, what is causing that? And can we confront it? Because some of it's trauma based. So you may not be able to like hit it right on the nose, but is this a moment where I can confront what is stopping me from finding joy in this moment? And in many cases, going back to my point before, is because we're not accepting what we're being given.
Mm-hmm.
And so why is that? Why don't I want to? Why aren't I okay with the fact that I'm here right now?
Right.
What things have happened in my childhood that creates this narrative that I don't belong here? I know one thing I would say to myself is, oh, little Black girl, how did you even get up here? Like you don't deserve to be here because you're just a little Black girl. And I would say that and it took me a long time to realize that that was a mantra in my head.
Right. And those kind of mantras start probably really early on, right? And they're hard to break. It's a habit that has to be broken. It's an old tape that we play that does not apply any longer. Maybe it never did.
Right.
Uh, but but I can definitely relate to that also. Um, that negative self talk that comes up, and I do think that it's trauma based, whether it's from something that happened to us, or the culture, right? It sounds like that mantra that tape that was playing is sort of culture based for you, and probably generational
Yeah.
trauma.
Yeah, for sure.
So um, I think the fact that you identified it and worked on breaking it, is very brave, and maybe one of the keys to, kind of unlocking the self-worth that really truly exists.
Yeah, it does. And the more that you crack through the shells, I mean, and especially when you start digging into cultural ones and like race-based ones, and when we're talking about womanhood and like those real big ones that aren't just seated in ourselves, but seated in the context of society, when you start breaking through those, that's when like it's real.
Right. Right. And we've said it many times, trauma is the real pandemic, and I think that it's the basis for this I don't even want to call it a syndrome anymore. I think you're right. Like, we named it. Why did we name it? My mother used to say, like, if we brought home a stray cat, she would say, don't name it. We're not keeping it.
Yep, yep. I don't want it. I don't want nothing to do with that dog, right?
Yes. So, we need to change that language also. You know, maybe it's, I need to look at my self worth. I need to look at self love and cultivate the self love and self worth that I really have, and don't give it a disease name.
Yeah, and it's funny that it comes right back to self-love.
Hey there, Wendy Love Edge here. I'm so excited because I have Edge Coaching and Consulting LLC, where I've brought together all of my education and experiences so that I can help you have the life that you want. I'm an intuitive life coach, Osho Zen card reader. I perform brain spotting services to help heal trauma, inner child work, Reiki, and so much more. So if you're interested, check it out, edgecoachingandconsulting.com, and you can book your services right on the website.
Have you heard of the Cannabis Nursing School? It's a place where cannabis nursing, entrepreneurship, and spirituality meet. The High Aligned Tribe is waiting for you, and it's so easy to find. CannabisNursingSchool.com.
And we're back. So we're talking about, do we call it imposter syndrome anymore? I don't know. We decided it's not a syndrome. I think there's something to, when we give a label and a so-called diagnosis to something, then we're living into that. And in fact, when I first started going out and speaking about cannabis and holistic health, I talked a lot about this and not owning your diseases. Like I hear people say, my diabetes, my arthritis, why are you owning that? And I really was very intentional about my language. And I have noticed when I'm not feeling well, because the things that go wrong in my body do have labels, and I'll go back to some of that language. And you're just telling the universe what you don't want over and over again.
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah, yeah, and that's the thing. I think being intentional about the language. So we talked earlier about like those mantras that play in our minds, the recording, but you can also hear some of those mantras being played out in the language that we speak and not even realize it. And so, and usually it's an affirmation of whatever is playing in our mind. And I think one of the first things that we can do to help even identify maybe the source of imposter syndrome is to understand what language you use and why we use it. Like to like query your yes girls and hey them they like whoever, like question why you chose to say that, not out loud like why did I say, like to yourself, like why did I choose this sentence, why did I choose this word, why did that person respond to me that way, why did they smile when I was talking to them, because obviously something you said must have been appealing to that person, right? But do you even realize it? Or on the flip side, maybe what you said they didn't like, and that should be queried as well. Like, I wonder why they didn't like it.
Right. Yeah, I think language is important, and how you're received, what people hear, depends on their frame of reference, intelligence, experiences, and will be received differently by that person than the next person, and differently perhaps than what you intended. So our language is important, and what we really need to make sure that, I'm not suggesting to ignore when you have certain diseases or issues, right? We need to take care of ourselves and figure out what works and what doesn't. At the same time, living into it every day. Oh, my arthritis is bothering me again today. Just reinforces that. So, we have to be real, and at the same time, choose our words wisely and figure out what it is we actually want. and who we really are
Yeah.
in
You're
turn.
not your disease. You are not your disease. You are not
Right.
your circumstances, right?
Right. Exactly. And so I think with this idea of I'm not worthy, I'm an imposter, why would they choose me? Why did I get this award? Instead, take some time and think about that, and maybe list off in your mind what are my skills and abilities,
Yeah.
rather than all the reasons why you don't deserve something. you know
Yeah.
be honest. These are my skills, these are my abilities. I am a worthy individual, of receiving, X, Y, or Z.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. And I think we all are. We're worthy of whatever comes our way, whatever we attract. It's on purpose.
It is. I mean, there's been times, where I've had people, I've been offered different things that maybe were a little bit outside my skill set, and sometimes I'll accept them and sometimes I won't, like a project or something. And the times that I have accepted them when it's a little bit outside my skill set, I've had people get really mad about it.
Yeah.
Right. And, initially it kind of can hurt my feelings, right? Or I can go down that rabbit hole of, oh, they're right. I shouldn't have been the one that they selected. But you're selected often for different opportunities based on all of you. And it might not be exactly your skill set, but maybe someone sees something in you that they really want for whatever that project is.
Yeah. Yeah. And who else is gonna advocate for you but you?
Mm-hmm.
Like if somebody gonna say they mad at you because you got this opportunity, and then you get mad at you because you got the opportunity, like it's like, well, who is gonna stand up for Wendy? Who's gonna stand up for Ashley? And
Right.
so I think we do ourselves a disservice when we're like, you know what? You may not think that I deserve this, and I may not even think, but I'm gonna go ahead and do the best that I can when I go in here and do it.
Yes, exactly. My mother used to say, everyone's doing the very best they can. Be kind, you know,
Yeah.
and, follow it up with, sometimes that's not very good.
Right.
But that's the best they got. Sometimes
Right.
it's fantastic, So, being, again, it comes back to that unconditional love. I think, trying to and living into unconditional love in your life for yourself and for others is the first step to kind of breaking this pattern, and then really looking honestly at your skills and abilities and being intentional about your language and what you choose to do. All of these things help to kind of elevate you as an individual to who you really are and what you're meant to be.
Yeah, for sure. Um, yeah, so as far as I'm concerned, imposter syndrome does not count anymore. We've eradicated from the English dictionary.
I love it. Yes.
We're not gonna say that no more.
Yes, I agree. No more. We'll have to figure out what we're going to name this episode.
All right. Imposter syndrome no more.
There you go. I love it. Well, thanks so much for chatting with me about this. It's been fantastic. And this has been the Grow Podcast. I'm Wendy Jo.
I'm Ashley. See
Have
you
a great
later.
week, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.